All right, lesson 134. This is kind of a really code-focused lesson. There's not a lot of technical calculations or anything. It's just a lot of code references. We're talking about swimming pools, spas, hot tubs, and hydro massage baths. Again, this one is just 100% right with your nose in the code book here. So it's going to be sort of a shorter video. Really, the best thing, read the chapter, check the code book. But I want to just try to explain a few key points here. And I think this is one instance where the NEC does a nice job of, in our textbook too, of sort of using the different parts of an article, which I don't think we really focus on too much otherwise. But in this case, we have part one of Article 680 is just our general requirements. Part two is going to focus specifically on permanently installed pools. Part three then is going to deal with storable pools, storable spas, and storable hot tubs. The difference, I think, can be subtle, but generally it's not. What's the difference between permanently installed and storable? Again, are you taking this thing down in the winter? Yes or no? That's kind of the distinction there. Part four here is spas and hot tubs, and that would be permanently installed in this case. Part five talks about fountains. Part six talks about pools and tubs for therapeutic use. Part seven is hydro massage bathtubs. And part 8 is electrically powered pool lifts. And you can see the further down that list you get, it kind of gets a little more obscure. Naturally, you're going to spend most of your time in this part 2, part 3, maybe this part 4 section, right? And again, it's just a nice way that the code actually breaks down every article. And the textbook actually does a nice job of actually using those article parts for this particular chapter, I think. Again, I'm just going to point out a few key things here. Number one, the name of the game here is grounding, as you would imagine. So this is a nice chart right out of our EWR book, basically kind of giving us a nice overview of what needs grounded and what's a suitable means of grounding. So essentially anything that can be current carrying must be grounded and bonded here, as you would imagine. They do mention some various types of conduit and raceways that could also achieve the grounding. And again, just take a look at this again. It's just some very technical stuff, code reference stuff. But I will explain a couple of key terms here coming up in a bit. And again, just another sort of chart of what all needs to be bonded and grounded. And I mean, again, if you can think of it, it was probably on one of these two charts we just looked at. A couple things I think are worth a little bit of explanation here. You're going to read a little bit about bonding pool water, which I always think sounds pretty comical. But it's a pretty serious thing. But they tell you basically if we go back a section here and look at this chart, let's just say that none of these things are actually in contact with the pool water somehow. That's kind of a long shot, but if just by chance none of these things are in contact with your pool water, right? Think about the ladder, okay? That's going to be in contact. But just on the off chance that none of these things are in contact, we now have to actually bond our pool water with 9 square inches of some type of a metal conductive material. I've never seen an instance where you didn't have one of these items in contact with your pool water. But in the case that there's not, we do need to be sure that that pool water is bonded. And you can imagine why that's pretty important, naturally. So the next thing I want to describe here to you is this wet niche luminaire. It doesn't really apply anywhere else. Other than pools, so it's not a term I don't think anybody's going to be familiar with. But what we're talking about is essentially an underwater pool light is actually, the housing of it is actually going to be flooded with water, and it's intended to be flooded with water. So essentially we have sort of, generally it's going to be a PVC, sort of a back box. Think of a recessed light, except this is in the side of your pool wall. And we have this totally enclosed and sealed pool light right here, with a cord coming off of it, and we'll actually run some PVC pipe or conduit into this, the wet niche as they call it, and you're actually going to take this sealed cable that comes right off this light and pull it back through your conduit, right? So the pool water will actually fill this section here. It is important when you're connecting this conduit, you want to make sure it terminates higher than the level of the pool. Otherwise, that becomes what? A drain, right? So it's something you may not think of, but this conduit needs to terminate higher than the pool water level, right? And just some photos here. So here's a photo of sort of the back box. You can see the conduit coming into it. And this is sort of a picture of your totally sealed light. It reminds me a little bit of a car headlight for some reason, but this is all one unit. It's not meant to be taken apart by the electrician. It's totally sealed. And quite often, guys, sort of to close here, many of these components are taken care of by a pool contractor, somebody that specifically does this. But it is important because this is an instance where we need to work closely with the pool installer. A lot of code requirements we need to make sure we're following. Again, not anything really, tips or tricks we can talk about other than read the code book and try to understand it and commit as much of it as you can to memory. Again, get your nose in that code book and have fun with this one.